So the first formula, when someone asks you, tell me about yourself, asks you for your worst story, is that your story, or it has something to do with people. In the way that Chris Westphal, an elevator pitch champion, described it as this. It says, what have you done with, through, or for others? Even if you are the most amazing person on earth, if you start just talking about yourself, my vision is to become the most important person in the world. Nobody wants to talk to you. My vision is to be the richest, most powerful man in the world. Like, who wants to talk to someone like that? With, through, for others. Now imagine someone that says, you know, I don't really like my job that much, but I love my team. And because of this team, we've been together for 8 years, and I feel like this thing we can accomplish, you know, the more we do. Like, imagine someone like that. You wouldn't want to network with them because this person is committed to their team, committed to their work. Imagine someone that says, like me, if I had to pick which one of these I would be through. Why am I a professor? Why do I do what I do? Why did I even start HH? Because I want to work through other people. I want to raise up this person so that they can do something great. And I feel like that's my calling. For some others, it's for. Someone like Mother Teresa, who lived her whole life serving the poor, it was for others. She got great satisfaction helping that other person. Now look at these, with others, through others, for others. If you had to pick, which one describes you? Think about that for a second. So that's number one. So this is one part of the formula. Okay? There's many ways to do this, but I'm teaching you one method, one easy method to do this. Number two, okay? With, through, for others. Again, this also comes from Chris Westphal. Okay? It's kind of like past, present, future. He says there's 3 parts of an elevator pitch. Characteristics, and then things you hope to do. Okay, so what exactly is this? So you set this as a base. So let's say, for example, I'll talk about me. For me, it's through. I want to work through other people. And I come up with something that talks about either my accomplishments, my characteristics, or things I hope to do. So I'll give you an example. If I tell you, okay, that, you know, I'm a go-getter, I'm a hard worker. I mean, is that exciting? You know, do you care? Not at all. But what if I say, you know, I love going to work. I have to actually wake up at 5 a.m. every day to go to work because then I don't hit traffic and I get to work around 5:45. And I love getting there early in the morning. Nobody's there. I have my coffee and I get there before everyone in the quiet moment and I get about 2 hours done of work so that before people start coming and talking to me, I love to work alone. Now imagine I said something like that, okay? I didn't tell you I was a hard worker. Am I a hard worker? What do you know about me? Yes. How do you know that I'm a hard worker? What did I just tell you? I wake up at what time? 5 o'clock. Now, if I told you I'm a hard worker, you'd be like, it's boring. I don't care about this person. But I just told you something. I told you the story that talks about me at 5 a.m. In other words, using this method and being able to tell a story about it is a way to talk about yourself without talking about yourself. Okay? So that would be like characteristics. What about things you hope to do? You know, I have this job now, but actually that's not my passion. My real passion is to get a boat. And what I want to do is be in the open sea and train others. But unfortunately, boats are expensive and I need capital. So I have this planned out where for 20 years, you know, I'm saving my money so that I can be the captain of a boat. And when I get this boat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise up young fishermen and I'm going to teach them to fish just like my grandfather taught me. And so imagine that kind of person. It's exciting. They don't like their job, but they have a goal. They have a purpose to do something else. So that's also so that's things you hope to do. What about accomplishments? What if someone says, why should we hire you? And you say, well, I've never done anything big, but when I was 6 years old, I remember that I ran this lemonade stand, and nobody taught me how to do it, but I understood that. And I talk about how I made money when I was 6, I made money when I was 10, I was successful at 15. Imagine me telling a story about that, and now you know something about me. You say, maybe he's never done this job, but his whole life he's been accomplished. He's done these things. Now, what is this part that ties these two together? This is the story part. So this is work, and this is the story part. A story has, again, there's many ways to talk about it, but a story that I'm going to tell you now has 3 parts to it. So let me talk about this a little bit. A story has just some backdrop, like an introduction, and a story has tension. Without tension, there is no story. Now watch. Compare a story to a description. If I tell you, if you say, tell me about yourself, and I say, I work for whatever company, I'm an engineer, I wake up at 8 o'clock, I go to work, I log into my desk, I do this, I do that, I do this, I do that. If I said that, that's boring, nobody cares. It's completely uninteresting, But what if I say, I tell you a little story, and I say something like, I'm an engineer, and most people think engineering is really boring, and like we're just fixing things, but I see myself as a problem solver. If there's a problem somewhere out there, through good engineering, we design products that help fix that problem. And I make some story about how I make people's lives better or something. I raise some tension, here's this problem, and then I resolve it. So, for example, if you say, what did you do today? What happened today? And I say, I woke up at 8 o'clock, I drove to work, I had coffee at 9, I met this person. After about 3 minutes, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so boring. I don't want to listen to this guy. But what if I say, I went to work and I saw this guy, I can't stand this guy, and he's always so rude to me. But today, he decided to buy me coffee. And I was so surprised he bought me coffee. And I was wondering, does he want something from me? And then he actually apologized and said, I feel so bad that I treated you bad all these years, let's get to be friends. If I told you that, now that's interesting to you. And why is that interesting to you? Now think, when you're with your family, when you're with your friends, when you're with anybody that's close to you, how do you talk? You talk in story form. You talk in narrative. Think about you sitting with your friends. You're having a drink. Okay? 4 or 5 of you. What do you talk about? Do you say, I woke up at 9 o'clock, I went to work? Do you start describing your life? No, that's boring. What do? You know what happened to me this week? And I met this person, and they did this. We tell a story. There's no story without tension. So think again, okay? If we combine these 3 parts, you have with, through, for others, okay? You have something talking about your accomplishments, your characteristics, or things you hope to do. And then you have this whole thing, you wrap it up in a story, you create tension. Okay? So I'm going to give you an example. Okay? So imagine I meet someone and, let's say that I work for product development in Samsung, and I work for the electronics division, and I do product development. And they say, okay, so Joseph, tell me about yourself. And I say something like this. Now, I work for product development, as you know, but I actually majored in architecture in college. And as an architect in college, I used to stay up all night, at least 2-3 nights a week, because we had weekly projects. Every week we had to do this project, and we had to stay up all night. So I got into architecture because design was fascinating to me. But as I started working in architecture, and I was good at it, enough to win second prize in an all-city design contest, I realized that I didn't like architecture. I realized that what I liked was working with other architects. And as I worked with them, I felt like we accomplished something. And in my work here with Samsung, in my work in product development, it's not that I care so much about products and designers. I love my team, and I love working with them. When I'm with this team, I feel like I'm part of a group, and we can do something. So for example, I told you that story. Okay? What do you know about me in that story? Okay? What do you know about me from what I just told you? Let's start here. What do you know about me? Which one of these am I? With. If I tell you, wow, I'm an awesome product, I'm an awesome designer, you don't care. But all of a sudden you care more because I just told you that people are important to me. Without this people connection, our stories are not interesting. Next, which of these was I? Accomplishment, characteristics, or things I hope to do? Which accomplishment, also characteristic. What are some of my characteristics? What do you know about me? From that little story, what do you know about me? Am I hardworking?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Stayed up all night.
I stayed up all night twice a week. And in fact, I know this because my roommate in college was an architect major. And this guy did not sleep. I was a philosophy major. I slept a lot, but he didn't sleep at all because he was always doing projects. Architect majors are some of the hardest working majors that I've seen. You know that I work hard. Now, if I told you I'm a hard worker, is that exciting? No. But I just told you the story, and now you deduced. You figured out that I was a hard worker. I didn't tell you. You figured it out. And now it's interesting to you because now you're invested. It's like you're investing money because you're like, I get it. It's like getting a puzzle. Okay? What else do you know about me? So I stayed up all night. What else? Am I a creative person? Yeah, because I was an architect. Okay? What else? Do people like me? I never told you that people like me, by the way. Do people like me? Most likely they do. How do you know? How do you know? Because I'm part of a team. And I love the team. You could tell I love the team, right? So you know that I'm a team player. You know that I'm hardworking. You know that I'm creative. You know that I'm not lazy. You know that I'm driven. Where's the tension? What's the interesting part? How did an architect major become somebody that works for design and development in Samsung Electronics? Now you're wondering. So what would be the next question? How did you work for Samsung? And that becomes the next question. But if I told you I'm an architect, I work for Samsung, there's no interest, no connection. What did I just do there? I built up a story. I raised tension. So what happens is the goal of an elevator pitch, okay? The goal of an elevator pitch is not friendship, it's an invitation. You want them to ask you, tell me more. What? What is that about? What is that? So think again about how this story works out. How this story works out. And what happens is that as you work out the story, the invitation part is what? Tell me more about yourself. Okay? What if I told you this? So I was an American professor, and I lived in Japan. And one thing I noticed was hanging out at the convenience stores, I saw these people that Japanese call fritas. And fritas were people that live paycheck to paycheck. And these are people, because of Japan's sort of really difficult educational system, they were never able to go to college. So some of them are 30 years old, 35 years old, and they clean streets, and they work for, they live paycheck to paycheck. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. And yet, as I talk to some of these people, lower middle class, I realize this guy is smart. If he was able to get an education, if he was able to even go back to college, he could become something else that he wanted to do. If he was an American, he could, because America's educational system is such that you could become a doctor at 40, at 50. But in Japan, this is impossible. The only way to do this is to allow them another opportunity. So because of that motivation, my organization, we launched this new college. And this college was aimed not at the elite, this college was aimed at the lower middle class, Japanese fritas, people who would not have an opportunity in the Japanese educational system. Using English and using an American educational system, small classes by design so that someone like him could graduate. Now, imagine I told you that story. That's actually a true story. That's why I was in Japan. And so I would tell this story, and what do you think the investor or the Japanese person, when they heard that story, what do you think they asked me next? What do you think they said next? They'll be like, why are you here? Why are you here? What makes you want to do that? And they totally are invested in that story because they're wondering, what am I doing, an American foreigner? Why am I in Japan working to start a school for those kind of people? And so using that, again, okay, I mean, it's not that I want you to get to know me. I want you to think about how that fits this formula, okay? Was I with, through, or for people? Through or for, both, right? Okay. Which one? Accomplishment, characteristics, things I hope to do. Things I hope to do, because I launched this new college. What's the story behind it? You can imagine this Japanese investor listening to the story saying, you know that guy that works at 7-Eleven? You know, maybe he doesn't want to work there. Maybe he wants to be something more, but he couldn't do it because of our Japanese educational system. Maybe I need to ask Joe something. And one time I even had a guy ask me, what can I do for you? You know, so he happened to be actually one of the chairmen in Japan of one of the largest airline companies in Japan. And I said, I'm trying to meet the president of this college. You know, it was this big school, and I don't know him, you know. And he said, I know him. So he gives me his email, and I was able to meet him. And again, it's not because I knew anything, it's that I told the story. I told the story, and it made him interested. So he asked me, now imagine if I said, I'm starting this college in Japan using American education to help Japanese. What if I told that story? Is that interesting? Not really. Not really. Compared to the other one, again, where I talked about something from here, and then I wrapped it up in a story. So if we were to do this as a project, what we would see is that this elevator pitch, this networking elevator pitch, when you combine these elements, when you combine these three secret sauces, so to speak, if you combine them together, you're able to talk with anyone, anytime, anywhere, and connect with them and tell them who you are. Now think again, a lot of this has to do with something like the business card. So in Asian culture, both in Korea and Japan, the business card has almost no function apart from introducing myself. So if I meet him, we shake hands, and I give him my business card, and he gives me his, okay? All this is to say that this is who he is. It serves no function apart from that. If I called him and I said, hey, I got your business card yesterday, he'll be like, why are you calling me? You know? I mean, most of you are Korean. If someone gave you a business card, would you just call them? Probably not. The card's function is to say, this is who I am. Let me introduce myself. But typically in Western systems, the card means something. It's like an invitation. Call me. So if he and I are talking, we're talking, right? And then, you know, I give my pitch, and I say, okay, so tell me about yourself. We're talking. And he says, hey, let me give you my card. Usually what that means is, contact me. I want to network with you. So what I do intentionally when I network is I intentionally don't give my business card. I wait. Because if they give me their business card, I know that this person wants to network with me. It's a sign. It's like giving me their phone number because it has their phone number, email, and contact. But in Korea, we give our cards to anybody. You know, if you want to buy a car, you give them your card. If you go to the grocery store, you meet someone, please deliver this, you give my card. You know, the card has no meaning. So again, think of what the point of this is. You wrap this, you talk about work, and you put it up in a story, and then it's inviting them to contact you. It's saying, please contact me. I want to network with you. Please contact me. I want to network with you. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit, focus on number 3 a little bit. So as we think about how to tell a story, and as we think about how to make the story more alive, there's really 2 parts to a story. There's an A and a B. Okay? The A part of the story is the story itself. And the key to telling a story is tension. Problem to be solved. Issue. So when you do talk about a story, remember the goal here is that if you just describe your life and describe what you do, it's not interesting to people. You want to be able to raise tension. You want to be able to raise the problem. You want to be able to say, this was the issue in my life, and I've overcome it. So for example, I could tell you this other story. If someone says, so tell me about yourself. And I say, well, I work in financial services, and when I was 16, my father declared bankruptcy. And up until that time, we were a wealthy family. My parents had bought me a car in the United States, they bought me clothes. I had never worked a part-time job. And after he declared bankruptcy, my father came to me and said, Joe, I can't give you an allowance anymore. You have to earn your own money. And so at that time, in my wealthy neighborhood where nobody was working, I got a part-time job. And the only job that was available to me at that time was at a women's clothing store. And for a 16-year-old boy to work at a women's clothing store was very embarrassing, I remember. And I just kept on thinking, I really have to make more money. I have to make more money. I have to make more money. But then what happened was, after I started doing that and our family had to sell our big house, we lived in a 6-bedroom, huge house. After we sold that, we moved into a small 2-bedroom, a really small place. I actually got to talk to my dad. And we ate dinner together, and we laughed together, and we saw movies together, and we went to the park. In fact, that bankruptcy was the best thing that ever happened to my family because it brought us close together. And now I realize that, well, it's good to have money, but it's not the most important thing because that bankruptcy actually helped my family. This is a true story, by the way. My dad did declare bankruptcy, and through that bankruptcy, I was actually able to get closer to him. Now imagine if I told you that story. Yeah, it's a true story. I told you that story. What did I do there? What did I do in that story? I raised tension in a problem. If I just said, my dad lost all his money, it was really hard. That's not interesting. That's not interesting. There's no story. There's no tension to be overcome. There's no tension to be overcome. So one of the things is that when you tell a story, especially if it's a story about you, there has to be some vulnerability. If you are not willing to be open about your life, if you're really closed, it's very hard to network with people. It's very hard. Because again, you have to be able to open up this tension that you had in your life. And for most of us, the tension or the problem, for most of us, these things that we had in our personal life, it's not pleasant. It's not really a happy moment. We have something we have to overcome. And to overcome it, it's painful and difficult. But if you find that you can do that, people are going to want to network with you because they know that you've overcome that issue or problem. They know that you've overcome it. And again, it could be personal, it could be something, but because it's a work story, in this case, what the story does is it allows them to see beyond just the facts. They're figuring details out because humans communicate by narrative, by story. When you go home, some of you are married, when you go home to your wives or husbands, what do you talk about? You say, I woke up at 9 o'clock, I did this report. No, you don't. You tell a story. You know what happened to me? This guy almost ran me over in a car. What? And then you end up talking because there's tension and something to be overcome. Okay? So that's the first part of a story. Now, if I stopped here, okay, most people think that storytelling is just this. They think storytelling is just this. But actually, there's two parts of storytelling. Half of it is this, and the other half is how you tell it, what I call the mechanics. And this includes things like, the nonverbal aspects of it, the power 7. It includes things like tone of your voice. It includes things like, not just hand gestures and all that, but like, how big you smile. And again, it's pretty much mostly related to the power 7. So I'll give you an example. If someone has a really awesome story, even if they say, yeah, when I was a kid, something, my parents both died, and they have really bad nonverbal language. But if the story is powerful, you still feel moved because the story is powerful. What if the story is not powerful? What if it's just a normal, regular story? So think of an analogy. I love to eat, so let me give you a food analogy. A few years ago in Japan, one of my friends got married, and he invited me to his wedding. And it's the first time I went to such a really expensive Japanese wedding. It was $400 a person. Very expensive. And he told me out of that 400, almost 30% of the cost was the steak from the dinner. And I said, what? What is that? He said, you'll see. So I went there, and for the first time I had Kobe beef, the first time I had Kobe steak. And it was like 2 pieces about that big, and it was over $100 a plate, just for 2 small pieces. So I'm eating the steak. This is amazing. I can't even describe, it's just amazing. Now that steak was so good that if I took that steak and I microwaved it, would it still taste good? Yes, it would. Because the steak quality is so high that even if I cook it bad, it still tastes good. You don't need much. Of course, it's better if you cook it well. So if the story is good, even if I tell the story like this, monotone voice, no eye contact, if the story is good, it's still powerful. But the fact is, most stories aren't that powerful. And so what we have to do is apply mechanics. What are mechanics? So I'm telling a story, and let's say it's her, and I'm telling the story, and it's not just, okay, so this happened to me, and I was a little boy, and it's like, okay, so I was a little boy, and when this happened, right, this guy came to me, and look at what my body's doing. I'm using my entire body, I'm using my voice. I'm saying that, I almost died. I was like drowning in that place, and it was like, whoa, what could I do? See how I'm using my body, my voice, I'm using my eye contact. I'm making this connection to tell the story. And people who are good at B, they're good at telling other people's stories. So good storytelling is part the story itself, and within that story, tension is, this is what's the tension to be overcome. But this is the part to focus on. You can take your ordinary story, and again, going back to the food analogy, if this is the Wagyu, the Kobe beef steak, you know what this is? This is the charcoal, the plate, the seasoning, the grill. If you take really cheap meat and you get like Wolfgang Puck or Gordon Ramsay, some really impressive chef, if they took that cheap meat, they could make it taste good. Because they would season it, they would grill it, and then they would put it on a nice looking plate, they would drizzle some sauce on it, and that's what this is.